The Angry Chicken is a production of Amove TV. Bookmark amove.tv for more gaming and esports shows. The Angry Chicken is directly supported by listeners like you via patreon.com/TAC.
Everyone, get in here! Ready for action! I've got the beast in my sight.
A podcast about Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft. This is The Angry Chicken.
Welcome, everybody, to a special episode of The Angry Chicken. We are sans Jocelyn, sans Garrett, but I will be taking you through a bunch of arena changes with our special guest today, and that is Merps of the Grinning Goat. You're partnered with Dwakta. You guys do the Lightforge podcast as well. And let's first introduce you. How's it going? Welcome to the show.
Good. Dude, Dills, thanks for having me on. Glad to have another, platform to talk from, because I love talking. But very happy to be here today. Thank you.
Dude, I'm happy to have you on. We had a Dwakta on the show a long time ago, and that was kind of during the Arena Warriors Matter fiasco. Which is now, what, a year and a half? That's a long time ago.
It's a long time, and you guys finally realized your mistake and got me on instead. So.
Yes, we were. Yeah, the job. Fan emails were insane. They were like, "You got the wrong goat." So we're fixing that now. But first, tell people, you guys stream on, what is it, twitch.tv/The Grinning Goat or Grinning Goat?
Just Grinning Goat.
Grinning Goat. Okay.
Yes.
And you guys do pretty regular streams, almost every night.
We stream typically Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and of course we have our Sunday streams in which we always stream together to do the podcast and then our co-op run.
Okay, sweet, and it's all arena. You guys are the arena guys.
With the exception of the end of the month where we have a bold journey to rank 20.
Okay.
That's it.
Do you actually have lots of decks, or do you have just one deck that you play when you go into Constructed?
When I go to Constructed, I play the most cancerous deck and I craft golden version of everything. So
sure.
I'm that guy at rank 23 with the golden patches and the golden everything.
Just crushing all the noobs, just getting that card back as quick as possible. All right, cool. Well, okay, so the reason we're doing a special episode, if you're not familiar, and if you listen to episode 199 of The Angry Chicken, which we just finished recording, you heard that there were tons of arena changes. So a lot of stuff to go through, and this is really, since the beginning of the game, the first time outside of the nerfs and the card removals, I guess the card bans, that we've really seen any real changes to arena. So there's a ton of stuff here. And we're just going to kind of crack through all this stuff and try to get the gist of what this really means for Arena. And I've drafted a few decks since the patch went live today. I actually drafted one and just retired it because I was like, I just want to draft again. And then I did play a little bit. So I have a small impression, but this patch is super fresh. So right now everything's a little up in the air as to what this really means, but we'll try to decipher things. So first of all, Arena is now going to the standard format. So what's your take on Arena moving, which has always been wild, to the standard format? Are you a fan?
Huge fan. I think it's not only a good change, I think it's a necessary change. And I think, if you've been on Reddit and if you've seen sort of people's reactions, the general reaction has not been positive, right?
Very strangely, yeah. To me, anyway.
Yeah, well, look, you're an Arena guy. So sure. I think for people who regularly play Arena and who, sort of are more forward thinking as to the future of the Arena, this makes sense. But for a lot of players, they maybe just once every month want to sort of have something different, blow off steam, and just go to the Arena. And they want to see crazy stuff happen, right? Sure. They want the Trollden experience by playing Arena, and that's absolutely fine. The only problem is for players who want, Arena to be a little bit more competitive, who want to see it have a bright future in the coming months and coming years, it has to go to standard. because when you're dealing with a card pool that is, 1,500, 2,000, 3,000 and up, it becomes a problem of what exactly do you play around, right?
Yeah.
Because and in the end, you just play around nothing, and everyone just plays their cards, and Arena basically has no skill, and I think even worse, and that's already pretty bad. New players will never jump into the Arena because you have someone 2-3 years from now entering the game. They're starting out unconstructed. They look at the Arena and they say, "Oh my God, I have to learn like 1,500 extra cards." There's no way that they would ever touch the Arena. So moving to standard was something like absolutely necessary.
So I'm 100% with you there. I also think what's really interesting is that the way they've handled new sets coming in the past in Arena is upping the percentages that you will draft those cards, right? To make sure that the new sets have an impact. And when you just kind of throw out a bunch of old cards and there's a smaller pool to begin with, you almost don't have to do that anymore, because just by default, those cards end up becoming a higher percentage of your draft, right? But if you keep, like you said, 1,500, 2,000 going on up, it's just a small drop in the bucket of the card pool, and suddenly like you have to do things. You have to force it, right? And I don't really like the forcing it, because then a card comes in like Abyssal Enforcer or Portal for mages that just defines the meta as soon as it's come, because they're just pushing it 200% more than any other card.
Right. We've definitely seen, if you want to call this the Abyssal Enforcer or Blast Crystal Potion meta, we've gone through the Firelands Portal meta, we've gone through the Keeper of Oldamon meta, these things that are quite frustrating for a lot of players. Yes.
And I do want to see those cards represented. I just want to see them represented in a fair manner, right? When they push them, they just have way too much impact, in my opinion. So some of the other changes that happened: common and basic cards will show up less than before. Now, do you guys have like the actual math on this? Do you know exactly the percentage that these cards have been lowered as far as what they're being offered, their offer rate is?
Man, as for exact numbers, you'd have to go back to the Addict calculated all of this stuff out. And I am not the numbers person, okay? But I think for this, I'm not sure if we have the exact number or not, but we are not a huge fan of this change.
Okay. Why would you not like this change to be implemented?
So what they're getting rid of a lot are stuff like the Yetis, right? Like the Yetis and the Boulderfist Ogres, sort of the boring cards, the vanilla curve cards. And when you're getting rid of that, you're just making the swings just a tiny bit bigger, right? Like, and Blizzard is basically saying, we don't want you playing Yetis. We want you playing like kooky chemists, right? We want you playing these new cards. And whenever new cards come out, they're not reprinting Yetis. They're not reprinting Pit Fighters or stuff like that. They're printing these cards with additional effects, right? So, like, look at the 4-drops in the latest expansion. You don't have Yetis, and Mech Yetis are phasing out. You have Kooky Chemists, you have Daring Reporters. You have these 4s that, have sort of a downside in the first turn, but then, or like Daring Reporter has a downside in the first turn, and then crazy upside if it survives. Kooky Chemist just changes the board state, whether in a positive or negative way. And we're not a huge fan of them sort of always pushing this game into just a lot more like unstableness and craziness.
Yeah. So I'll say this from the couple of drafts that I did since the change, and I'm gonna be, and you're gonna stream after this some Arena 2, so we'll find out as time goes on really what it means. But it seems like the game has moved away from a tempo-based game, which is kind of what has defined the Arena meta for a really long time. And it seems like more of a value race to me, just based on the couple of games that I did play. I played a mage that had multiple Firelands portals. It had Kabbalist tomes and all this kind of stuff. And, so many spells. And the percentage of spells to minions was such a difference that it was really just about getting like 1 or 2 threats to stick and then getting a bunch of value out of my removal spells, right? So that was my first impression, is that suddenly we got more of a value game than a tempo-based game, right? Like play a minion every turn and then make good trades. That's kind of been the staple of Arena for a long time. Suddenly now it's like, oh no, make sure I'm using my removal on the right threats, find the most value I can out of them, get a few threats to stick and deal face damage with those.
Right. So you're definitely going to see a lot more spells because that's something that they increase, right? They increase your chance of getting spells by 20%, which was something else that we were not a huge fan of. We sort of understand why they did it. So if I were to put myself in the Blizzard team's sort of shoes, I think what they saw a problem, and we can argue whether or not this was a problem, of the curve stone, right? People were saying that Arena is just curve stone. You play a 1, you play a 2, you play a 3, and you beat the guy who misses their 1 and then plays their 2 and 3, right?
Yeah.
And in order to solve that, because spells are more reactive, and then, by lessening sort of these vanilla minions, you also create sort of more of a comeback potential. The problem that Advocate and I saw with this spells is that, like, why are you increasing spells? What's so special about them, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of creatures, for example, with Battle Cry, they're basically spells anyways.
Yeah.
Or
spells tied to a body, essentially. Yeah.
Right. Spells tied to a body, and also, like Gnomish Inventor, it's 2/4 and it draws a card. It might as well just be a spell that summons a 2/4, right, and draws you a card. So we don't really see what's so special about spells, and it's this just weird distinction that we don't like, and then them increasing it, which we think sort of helps more classes than others.
Some classes obviously have stronger spells, right?
Yeah, definitely. And
what would you say to the idea of, instead of doing spells, just doing class cards, doing an increase on class cards, which is already slightly more than neutral cards in the offer rate anyway, right?
Yes, and I think that would be a better solution. That's a solution that we think would have been better, because by increasing spells, like what is your sort of end goal, right? Because you're just saying you want more to be able to react a little bit better, but spells aren't really the way. If you increase class cards, the end effect is making a class feel more like the class, which I think is fantastic. Like, and that's the point of when you play Arena, you don't want to play a neutral deck that sometimes plays like a mage card or a warlock card, right? You want to play a warlock deck, you want to play a mage deck, and by increasing class cards, you not only increase the power, increase sort of the ability for you to counter your opponent, you also feel more like playing that class.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I made this point on the Angry Chicken that in a lot of ways, Arena would sometimes feel like what was really defining the classes wasn't the cards, but the hero power.
Yes.
Right? And so you would end up being like, well, I'm a mage, but I'm Boulder Fist Ogre with ping is what I really am, right?
That's
and I'm not
right, yeah.
And so, I can understand like their thought process here of increasing spells by default is increasing class cards to a certain extent, but also then there's like certain spells that aren't really like necessarily like, okay, so if you increase spells, you're increasing Hunter's ability to get things like Call of the Wild, right? Mm-hmm. And Animal Companion. So they get more minions and mages get just more removal. And it's like it kind of affects everybody in a weird, wonky kind of way. Yep. Where it's not an even like increase in power level across all of them just because you're increasing spells, right? So yeah, I'm with you. I would have liked the class cards rather than the spells. But I mean, so far it does. I feel it makes that value game feel really important. And like you now suddenly realize like, okay, these rare and epic spells are really something I need to consider, right? Shield Slam actually exists in Arena for like the first time ever, which is very strange.
Epic cards. One interesting point that we wanted to bring up, and we try to reiterate like during our 3-hour-long podcast. It's almost as if we got an expansion right now. Epic cards, because when you drafted an Arena deck, you got maybe one epic per draft.
You're guaranteed 4 rares, right, throughout the draft, and then sometimes it would update or upgrade to an epic or whatever.
Sometimes it would.
An upgrade is subjective, by the way, because epic cards are not necessarily good.
Oh yeah, epic cards have huge swings in terms of value, right?
Yeah.
But now, and I've seen, lots of people have, for example, tweeted me their decks, and just sort of looking at the number of epics, you are 10 times more likely to get an epic card than before, which was like almost, you basically didn't get epics before, right?
Yeah.
You didn't get epics before, and now it's not uncommon to see, a deck with like 3, 4, 5 epic cards, which before was like astronomically low. And people are tweeting me, decks with 2, 3, even 4 legendaries. Before, if you saw 3 legendaries, that was like 1 out of 1,000 drafts kind of thing. And people seem to be getting like basically 1 legendary every deck, which is where the numbers sort of turn out. You're almost, you should expect a legendary every single deck now. So it's almost as if this change introduced epics and legendaries, where before they were sprinkled in once every blue moon, right?
Yeah, and they weren't, a lot of times too, they weren't even really that impactful to the overall flow of the game.
Yeah.
So it'll be definitely interesting. So neutral classic cards will show up less frequently as well. And I think this is again their attempt to kind of push the classes to matter a lot more than they used to. But what's crazy to me about this is, and then the last thing is Flamestrike, specifically Flamestrike and Abyssal Enforcer show up 50% less of the time. You don't seem to be very happy about that one. Talk about that change a little bit.
Okay, so I know I've been criticizing quite a lot, and before I put extra criticism, I do want to say that like you said in the beginning, I super appreciate the effort that the Blizzard team has put, has given to the arena, right?
Sure.
They have put a lot of work, and whether or not these changes work out or not, just very happy that they're doing something. Now, having said that, I really, really dislike this change to Abyssal Enforcer and Flamestrike. Although, once again, on Reddit, like, this is the one that was almost heralded the most, right? People are like, oh, finally,
Well, because these are like feel bad cards, right? Like, it feels bad to lose to them.
Yeah, but it seems like the only reason why Blizzard nerfed the offering rate of these 2 cards is because of general public complaint.
Yeah, because it's emotional responses. Like, you're like, he had Flamestrike. I can't beat that, right?
Right. It feels terrible, right? But if I've learned anything about just sort of how dev teams operate and sort of game design, it's catering to the mass public opinion is always a dangerous thing. And when you do something like this, because I don't think there is anything special enough about Flamestrike or Abyssal Enforcer for you to just target these 2. It really is because people just feel the worst about these 2. Like, if they're nerfing these 2, why aren't they nerfing Lightning Storm, right? Yeah. Why aren't they nerfing?
What about Dragonfire Potion? What about just any big AoE? Is that a problem, right?
Right. Yeah. Or, if you're saying, it's not about AoE, it's about value, then why aren't they nerfing Firelands Portal, right? Sure. Also from the mage, it's like, why did you target Flamestrike but not Firelands Portal? Why did you target Abyssal Enforcer and not Blast Crystal? It just doesn't make that much sense. And I fear that this will lead down a path in which further tweaks are just going to, sort of like, what does the public hate this month, right? Let's change that. And I think that's a really dangerous method.
I agree with that. I don't want them to make kind of snap decisions based on Reddit comments, right? I want them to really kind of crunch the numbers. And in a way, I'm hoping that this change was kind of brought about because they looked at the numbers and saw when you play Abyssal Enforcer, your win rate spikes in an unhealthy manner. If that is actually the reasoning behind it, then that would make sense. But I agree with you. I feel like playing Firelands Portal and hitting a 3-5 or whatever, or hitting like a 5-5, or hitting something really impactful with it will spike your win rate even more. Because Flamestrike, again, and it is weird because they made these 2 high impactful cards at the same mana cost for Mage, to the point where then it's like, what do I play around on 7, right? And I don't know now. And so now I play around Firelands Portal, right?
Yeah.
Because this has been turned down 50%. But I kind of like the idea that at each mana cost, you understand the possibilities, and if you successfully play around a Flamestrike, that means I win, right? That was a skill-based decision. So it's a little bit weird that now they're just like, no, just throw that out. Just forget Flamestrikes. Forget Abyssal Enforcers. Just throw those away.
Yeah, and to their credit, they have said that none of these changes are absolutely permanent, right?
Yes.
That they are very willing to just look at the situation, analyze, and either roll back or sort of tweak these changes. So I'm obviously speaking right now and knowing that they could possibly change it. Yeah.
All right. So the last thing on the list here that is weird because there was controversy I didn't see coming around this change is golden cards appearing in Arena. Finally. And this has been something that's been thrown out as an idea forever. Ben Brode, it's like 2 years or a year and a half ago on Twitter was like, yeah, that sounds like a cool idea. And now it's finally come. And this wasn't actually in the original notes. Like, this was added kind of later. I didn't know it was going to come with all this stuff at first.
Yeah.
But what's your take on gold cards? I mean, I'm a fan. What do you think?
My God, I love it. I have like over 100K dust. I have over 15,000 gold. I have like legendaries that I probably have, like 3 copies of and 2 gold copies or something. I'm ready for this, dude.
Sure.
All right.
This is like tailor-made for you because you play Arena, and so when do you get to showcase your collection ever, right?
Right. I want the intimidation factor, and I want I want to throw out that golden wisp on turn 1 and be like, "What do you got, bro?" Toss out the golden wisp and then toss out the golden coin and play nothing and just be like, there you go.
If you could get a golden coin in Arena, you're a god. That's.
I mean, all you have to do is your entire collection has to be gold, and that's or the entire.
Or only draft golden card. Yeah, always pick the golden card, whether it's the right decision or not. So this was one of the points that I kind of played devil's advocate to this change and why some people might not like it, right?
Sure.
And obviously, like, one of the reasons is if I only have one golden copy,
yeah,
only that one is golden and the other isn't, and then I have OCD and I freak out and I go crazy, right? Like, some people are like that. I personally, in like a constructed list, I never put one golden and one non-golden because it just drives me crazy that it makes the list longer. But it's not that I care that one's golden, one's not. I'm not an OCD guy like that. I just don't like looking at a long list and trying to make changes to it, right?
Right.
But I can see why some people have an issue with that. And then the other issue is some people were saying that there is a slight information gap sometimes, although the percentage of games that will be affected by this has got to be astronomically small, right? Like, we were trying to find the situation where this would actually be a thing. And basically, it's only when I'm searching into your deck, right? So, like, if you've played a golden copy of something, and then I search into your deck, or with say like, or if you haven't played it, excuse me, like if I search into your deck with like a Draconet Operative, and I find a non-golden something, and then you play a golden of that same card, I now know that there's another one, right? So I guess there's that.
Right, and I mean, you don't even have to search. Something like Joust, right? Joust.
Oh yeah, Joust would present cards. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, Joust would be an easier way. And then, so let's say you Joust, and then it shows that you have a golden pit fighter, right?
Yeah.
And then the game moves on, but then on turn 5 you play a non-golden version of it.
Sure.
Then I know that has another one in the deck. So yeah, it definitely comes into play here. And I think Ben Brode said that they will give you the option to turn that off in the future. But that probably means another 2 years. So
well, I hope that it doesn't take them that long to add a button to turn this off. So then the last like devil's advocate thing that I brought up is if you're drafting and let's say you get a pit fighter and then it's like next to like a golden piece of crap, you might then just be like in the back of your head, you're like, but I really want that golden card, and so it affects your draft choices, right? I'm not talking about like reason-based human beings will not do this, but there will be people who will draft because it's a golden card, right?
Look, Dills, reason-based human beings, you're absolutely correct, won't do that, but we're Hearthstone players, so
exactly.
We're far from that, all right?
Yeah. We've already proven that we don't care about logic and reason.
Oh, no.
All right. So overall, do you now? I guess my real kind of question about all of this is: do you think that this is too many changes to happen all at one time? This is like such a massive shakeup to all come together. Like they could have just done the standard thing and nothing else, and it would have shaken a bunch of stuff up, right? They could have just done adjusting the spell percentage, and it would have made a big difference, right? But what they did here is they basically like just beat Arena with a hammer into a completely different shape than it used to be. And is that healthy to do, or is this kind of like throw everything against the wall, see what sticks, and then start peeling things back?
So I'm not a fan of them implementing all these changes all at once because they are going to look at this the aftermath very carefully, right?
Yeah.
And I'm afraid because a lot of these changes sort of bleed into each other in sort of their effects and also how people are going to react to them, right? And what I'm afraid is that, for example, like everything is still up in the air. They even said that this change to standard is up in the air. I'm afraid that, during the analysis, because there's 5, 6 huge changes to the arena, I don't know how you separate out or identify what is the cause of the problem if there is a problem down the line, right?
Yeah, like which thing is making it whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially if, for example, and this is our prediction. We predict that the meta will slow down significantly, right? People are, because if you look at the number of 2-drops that were taken out, because it's moving to standard, about 1/3 of the usable 2-drops in the game are now out. And that slows down the game significantly. It changes the stat distributions, everything. So we predict a much slower game. So let's say Blizzard goes back and sees this, and they're like, no, the game is too slow now. Well, is it caused by a standard? Is it caused by spells? And so people keep spells in their hand. They don't play minions. Is that why it's slow? Is it because of the change to epics? Because epics are typically not on curve playable cards.
There's very few epic too. Yeah, with like Garrison Command. I can't even think of what all the epics are. Yeah.
Right. Or like funky,
barely any.
Yeah. It's like weird tech cards, right?
Yeah.
Is it that? Is it because you reduce the neutral class cards? I don't know. It could be all of them at once, but so that's what I'm afraid of. Like if they're going to look at it afterwards, they won't be able to easily identify what the problem is if they do see a problem.
Yeah. Because there's just so many variables now.
Right.
So now put on your dev hat a little bit, and you guys play a lot of arena. You understand the meta. You guys, I would say, are like the authority on what the card your tier list. I think is something that many people reference as like kind of the tier list at this point, right, for arena. So if you put your dev hat on and you threw all these changes out and we go back to old arena, like what changes do you think you would have just made if you were like, we got to make some changes?
So I think, all right, if I were in charge of Blizzard, right, I think what 2 changes I would immediately make is definitely change the standard, right? And then I do like the changes to the card rarity. I think that's good because I think you've had this pool of cards that never really impacted the arena, right? You had epics and you had legendaries that never really impacted the arena. And I think these 2 changes together are very good. I would not increase spells just yet. And, the reduction in neutral class cards, I don't think those are necessary as of right now, especially because we have the expansion coming up in, a month? Like a little bit more
beginning of April, technically. We don't know it exactly. We're guessing April 4th.
Right. And, they probably, we don't know what cards are going to be out. They know what cards are going to be out, so they know that impact. But this is going to be even harder to evaluate once the expansion comes out, right?
Sure.
Because I don't think you have enough time to evaluate all of these changes within 1 month. And then afterwards, you add in the expansion. And I really don't know, right? Especially because you're going to have much more spells from the newest expansion because those spells have the offering bonus along with the 20% bonus, right?
Do you like the offering bonus just as a concept?
I think it's necessary. Okay. As in, I think, or it used to be necessary before. I'd have to get a feel for it going forward. Sure. But before, it was definitely necessary because you still wanted to feel, you still wanted the flavor of the expansion, right?
Yeah,
and you
absolutely.
wanted to have like the old gods meta, the gadgets and meta. So I think that was necessary, and especially because we were at a point in which we had too many cards. So, right now I don't know, and especially with all the changes that they made, it's harder for me to say, but I do understand why they do it.
I expected actually my first few drafts because I did a rogue draft and immediately snapped up a Jade Spirit like, oh, there's got to be tons of Jades now. And then I got no more Jades. I was like, whoops, all right, never mind. I kind of expected that to immediately happen. And now with the new set, the one thing we do know about is like adapt, and maybe like you could draft really cool adapt decks once that happens if the offering bonus is there. So I do agree. I'd like them to temper it a little though. Like when it was 200%, it just seemed a little strong. Like it seemed a little in your face, right?
You weren't a fan of every mage having 4 Firelands portals?
No, I was not a fan of that at all. I was really happy when that kind of slowed down a little bit. All right, so anything else you want to discuss about these big changes before we call it?
Once again, I'm really excited about what's going to happen to Hearthstone this year. And I think since New Year's, the level of communication, them implementing the leaderboard, just sort of shining a spotlight onto the arena, I think is fantastic. And
you guys aren't second-class Hearthstone players anymore. You guys are like, there's more stuff happening today for arena than anything else.
Don't jinx it, man. All right, don't.
All right.
But yeah, I mean, we're really happy about that. And by the way, the expansion looks sick. I think it looks absolutely amazing. And I think the amount of detail you've seen go into MSG as an expansion and sort of like the mechanics that they offered, and the next expansion, Ungoro, it's ridiculous. Like, it almost puts the previous expansions to shame in terms of how much work it seems like they've put into there. So I'm just fantastically excited about the future, and just waiting to see what else this year brings.
Yeah, I mean, now we've got, if you're an arena player, now you've got arena leaderboards every month. You've got standard and all these amazing changes. You got gold cards. Now the last thing is to allow your wins to count towards your golden classes, right? Like that's.
Oh my God! Please.
Yeah, seriously, I'm working on all my golden classes now, and I'm realizing that I would have had them all long ago if my arena wins would also count.
Oh, but Dills, you just reminded me. I'm gonna be able to have, like, if I wanted to, I could have like a 30 golden card arena deck, but I won't have like golden.
You'll never have the golden class.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. Maybe that's coming. Maybe that's coming next. All right, and then before I let you go, do you know how many times you've gone 0-3? Has it ever happened?
Oh, dude, of course it happened.
Has it happened like enough times that you remember each time?
No, I tend to cry and then sleep it away.
And then move on and then hit the button again and go? Okay.
Yeah.
How many times have you paid $1.99 for an arena run?
Oh, a few times, because insider info, we'll just keep this between us.
No one else is listening.
You're guaranteed better cards if you pay.
Oh.
Guaranteed.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah.
It's funny because when I first started playing Hearthstone, like right when it was closed beta, people were selling keys on eBay. This is like a different world.
Right.
I spent the first like $10 that I ever spent on Hearthstone was all arena runs, and I never spent another $1 ever since.
So you
feels good, man.
So you got 9 zeros all the time, right?
Yeah. And that was, I chose Rogue every time, because back then you clicked your hero power again, you got a 2 damage dagger. It was crazy.
Oh my God, I totally forgot about that. I mean, those were days of the
Shiv cost 1.
And,
the dude was a 2/3 and a 2/1. I mean, it was insane. Rogue was ridiculous. Backstab hit anything. It was crazy. It was the Wild West. All right, man. Well, thank you very much for coming on and going through all of these arena changes and breaking it down from a little bit more of an expert point of view. We did have a conversation on the Angry Chicken, but it was a little more kind of just on the surface. And I'm interested to see what these changes do for players like Garrett and Jocelyn who don't really play arena. Does it prompt them to get in there a little bit more and not just, affect the hardcore arena community? But before we end the show, man, let us know again where people can find you and all the stuff you guys are up to.
Gotcha. Well, if you guys are interested in watching some sick 03 arena runs, you can catch me at twitch.tv/grinninggoat. We also have a YouTube channel, also the Grinning Goat. And you can catch me on Twitter, Merps4248, where I consistently tweet out pictures of chinchillas and my random ramblings. So,
all right. Just the important stuff. Cool.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, man. Well, thanks again for coming on. That's going to do it for this episode, this special arena-focused episode of The Angry Chicken with our guest, Merps. So check him out on all the places, and we'll see you guys next time. Job's done.
Thanks, man.